Welcome to Share a Pint, where we tap into the craft beer scene. I'm Jerry Hulla, your host.
Today I'm talking with Emma Whelan from Astro Lab Brewing. Thanks for being on the show, Emma.
You're welcome.
The brewing industry tends to be male-dominated, yet in Maryland there's strong female representation, from the president and vice president of the Brewers Association of Maryland to most of the staff at Grow and Fortify, along with brewers and owners such as yourself. Share with us what your experience are as a woman in the craft brewing industry, especially here in Maryland.
Well, as you said, there's plenty of women in the industry in Maryland, so I have to say I've had a mainly positive experience. But that said, I am a co-founder of a brewery and someone that's fairly high up. So, my experience is very different to, I'm sure, to a female trying to get into the brewing industry from the ground up. I think we've made leaps and bounds, but I think there's still a long way to go to get more women actually in the production and the design of beers. In some of the influential areas of breweries that actually, are producing beer, we tend to be on the more on the operations side of things. So I look forward to the next few years to see more females and other women getting into actually brewing beer and being at the forefront of designing beers, and maybe we'll see a whole new selection out there.
Yeah. Well, that segues nicely into maybe you expanding a little bit on what you feel needs to happen in order for there to be more inclusion of women and other minorities in the craft beer industry.
I think positive steps have to be taken at the local level. Breweries, it starts with a small effort. So, I work in an area where if you apply for a job and you're a female, it doesn't, it's not a big deal. But I think, more efforts to make it easier to access those jobs by women, and also just having role models and women in positions to look at and to kind of believe I can do that too. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And also one of my biggest pet peeves in the industry is everything in the beer industry is heavy and big, and so I think some effort needs to be made at the design level and the engineering level to be able to allow women more access to be able to use the equipment and be fully autonomous in the actual production space and delivery space.
Oh, okay. No, that's probably a good point.
I know it's a fun perspective that, I kind of heard earlier this year, and the penny dropped. I was like, wow, yeah, it's kind of like making something accessible to everyone means you have to make it also physically accessible to everybody. And then there's similar for minorities. I think, just having those visuals of people doing the jobs and, someone that it's like, oh, this person looks like me and I can do that too. And then just some positive hiring decisions for breweries to make.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And the weight of things and the size of things is a great point that probably most people don't think of, because it doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with being female. I'm sure there are plenty of guys where that stuff is really, really heavy.
Yes.
And no one thinks about that. Shifting back to Astro Lab specifically, your co-founder and head brewer, Matt Cronin, is from New Zealand. Talk a little bit about how the two of you met.
So I met Matt in Silver Springs, so it's kind of where we ended up. Matt worked at my husband's restaurant for a number of years, and during the time that he worked there, he would bring us some of his home brews, and I was just blown away by the quality of what he was producing. So over the course of about 4 years, we became friends. I really got hooked on craft beer and kind of hooked on his beers. And in 2016, we were both at a crossroads in our careers, if you would call it that. And over a beer on a cold January night, we decided that we would forge ahead with a craft brewery of our own. It wasn't necessarily, what you see now is not necessarily what we originally planned out to do, but it's much bigger.
Okay.
But yeah, so we've known each other now for 6 or 7 years.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what did you originally envision Astro Lab being and what it is now? Give people a perspective of what your initial thoughts were.
So I think initially we were like, let's gypsy brew. And then we said, oh, let's, contract brew. And then ultimately, as we got into it and we started getting the business plan together, and then we looked at locations, it kind of took a life of its own on. And here we are, we're a small microbrewery with a tap room and 15-barrel brew house and 5 15-barrel fermenters, 2 30s, a 15-barrel bright tank and another one, a 30-barrel bright tank. So as we got into the process of working through how we wanted our beer to hit the market and be represented, it grew, as I said, it grew a life of its own, and here we are. We ended up with a fairly big, a big operation from where we initially started off.
Okay, that's awesome.
And I think some of the planning process, you start out thinking, oh, we're only able to do this. This is the capital that we got behind us, and this is our capacity. And then as you get more and more confident with what you're trying to do and where you want to go, then the rest of the pieces don't seem so insurmountable. So we kind of grew it from that initial night of, well, let's just get some beer out to people so that they love it as much as we do.
That's pretty cool. Well, speaking of your location, you're in what used to be Joe's Record Paradise, who's since relocated. However, they have a really long local history there in the DC area. So talk a little bit about what went into choosing this location and why it was a good fit for Astro Lab.
So as I said, Matt and I met in Silver Spring, and we knew the community, and we built up a small following already. It's where we both lived. And then it's just such a great location in terms of being super close to DC, but accessible to the rest of Maryland, and that definitely fit into our, self-distribution strategy. And then also, I think we both just really like the fact that the community in Silver Spring is so diverse. We've got a lot of small mom and pop shops right across the street from us and in the downtown area, as well as some bigger chains. And it really is kind of it has a big city, small town feel to it that we really like. And, the diversity of it was definitely a driving factor for us to be in here.
Well, talking about the beer specifically, I've noticed that you seem to do a lot of collabs, Crooked Crab, Manor Hill, True Respite, Denizens. Share the role that those play in your portfolio.
So I think, for me, the collabs seem like a really small percentage of the beers that we make. But, the collab, we definitely have started to increase the number of collaborations that we're doing. And there's various roles that they, that they have in our portfolio, and various reasons for us doing them. As you mentioned, we did a collab with Denizens that also included Silver Branch, and that was kind of a welcome to the neighborhood by Denizens to the 2 new breweries that were coming into town. We get the question many times, oh, do you guys, will you guys get on? Is it like really acrimonious? And no, it isn't. We're neighbors and we're in the same industry. And, the 3 Silver Spring breweries really do see ourselves as, creating a kind of a little brewery hotspot in the DMV. It's the only area in the DMV that you can jump off the metro and hit 3 breweries on foot within a mile of each other. So, that's more of a friendly collab. Some of the collaborations we do because we can learn from another brewery, and they in turn can learn things from us. So it's an education thing, and sometimes it's just two small breweries that are trying to extend their range of people that know about them and know about their beers. And sometimes it's just because we just really like each other and we want to spend the day brewing a beer.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think that's good for our audience to know, is that what goes into collaboration, because, on their end, I'm sure there are people who are like, oh, I would really like to see such and such and such and such get together and make a beer. But, what goes into it. So I think you bringing up, learning from each other and having it being an educational experience and sharing information and sharing knowledge, all the way down to, hey, we just really like each other's beers and we thought it would be good to do something. So I think that's great. There's so many different reasons.
Yeah. And most of them, you end up with a positive result anyway, whichever the reason is. So, and generally have fun while you're doing it. Now,
if I'm correct, the one that you did with Denizens, the Pink Warrior, that was in conjunction for Pink Boot Society?
Oh, yeah. So that was actually a larger scale collaboration. The original collaboration we did with Denizens was called Extra Extra Extra. It was a extra pale ale, and that was before we actually opened in 2018. The Pink Boots collaboration involved the Pink Boots DC chapter, and it was I believe there was approximately women from 40 breweries in the DMV that took part in that brew, and Denizens was the host this year. So that was a particularly fun beer, and it sold really quickly, I think, from most of the breweries that took it.
Yeah, well, having somebody like Julie Verratti right up the street from you, not only as a neighbor and a brewing person, a collaborator, but just sharing information and things like that. Just two really strong women right there, located close to each other in the craft beer industry. So that's pretty good. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Julie's pretty awesome. She is really a mine of information and just experience. She's 4 or 5 years ahead of where we are. So generally, if I'm in a conundrum about something, I give her a call, and she's been there, done it, and figured it all out.
Yeah. Well, your mission statement mentions commitment to community, and you touched on that earlier when we were talking. So tell us a little bit about some of the ways that you demonstrate that commitment and things that you do with this community.
So, during COVID, it's really brought our community home to us. The support we've got has been huge. But in terms of generally being a support to the community, we really do see ourselves as part of a neighborhood and a bigger community. So we try and get involved on a small level through making donations to community organizations, helping out at community events, and then also through the vendors that we use. We try to use small local providers for the things that we purchase for the tap room. We've built good relationships with some local artisans. A lot of our menu comes from small local businesses that are like us and just really building their brand. I'll give you an example. We have some ice cream sandwiches from a local company called Scoop and Paddle. It's a woman-owned business. I think she has a couple of people on herself running it. It's amazing ice cream. And sometimes I think some of the customers come in just for the ice cream sandwiches that we rotate through and the flavors, every week or so. And then we purchase our meat pies, savory pies that we have in the tap room from a local producer out of Virginia, out of Alexandria. So that's another way that we try to, and then we try and create some community in the tap room. So we started a rum club about 8 months into opening, and again, that's something else that took on a life of its own. We have over 100 people registered for the rum club, and a contingent of 30 to 40 of them that meet every week on a Tuesday to run and come back and drink beer. And then all of a sudden they were meeting at the weekend, and now that we're in COVID and no one's running, we have our Astro Lab Zoom that, they still meet up every week and really see it as part of, they really want to keep that social and community feel going through the run club. So, there's several ways that we try and interact and be a good citizen in Silver Spring.
That's great. Yeah, it reminded me when you were saying that we talked with Zach at 1623 Brewing not long ago. Now they're out here in the Eldersburg, Maryland area, but he's still a Colorado guy, brewed for 10 years out that way. And that's what he was saying, that out there in Colorado, that's just where everybody meets. At the end of the day, you come there. If you have an event, like you said, runners start or end there, bikers. Sometimes you're going to go to a concert. What's the closest brewery to go before? He said there's just such a connected sense that the brewery is where everything happens. It's the heart of everything. And with your background and where you were born and raised, I would imagine that's pretty standard fare as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. That pub, that place where everyone meets. Yeah, so we've had all kinds of different activities. We bring in local artists, and just before the crisis hit, we had an art fair, which was, I think, one of our biggest nights yet. We had a Women's Day event where we got a bunch of local women-owned businesses in to talk about what they do or sell what they make. We do yoga classes, Pilates classes. We were just about to do a kids music class. So it's just all inclusive, and we're super family friendly as well, because we both have our own families. So we kind of get the struggle is real to have a social life.
That's great. Well, tell people where they can find you online: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, things like that.
Yeah, so we're on all of those and above. Our website address is astrolabbrewing.com. We try to make it fairly easy. All of our handles are Astro Lab Brewing. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we update them regularly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, we'll make sure that we have that on our show notes and put it up on our website at sharepintpodcast.com.
Thank you.
You bet. We've learned about the brewery. Let's get to know you a little bit better, Emma. You're from Liverpool, England. So talk about how you got into the craft beer.
So I think basically through meeting Matt is the main driving force. Before meeting him, I pretty much spent most of my career in marketing and business development, and much of it in the food and drink industry. I started out with Safeway in the UK as a graduate management trainee, and it isn't the Safeway that's here, and it no longer exists, but it was a really good grounding for understanding like marketing, communications, but also operations. We spent a year in a store actually training to be a store manager, so saw all of the aspects of running a large retail food operation. So my last job before Astro Lab was with Whole Foods Market in Montgomery County here in Maryland. I was the marketing team lead in the Silver Spring store, and then following a restructure took on the 3 Montgomery County stores. And I really got a chance to work with some really unique and interesting small artisan makers and providers while I worked there. Like, one of my jobs was to really work with local producers and bring them into the stores and try and promote their products, and saw some great success stories and such great passion for what people had made and what they built through their business. And I think I got the bug. So I was I as I said, I was blown away by Matt's beers and a huge fan, and we just all the stars aligned, and we were in the right place at the right time to kind of do something together that turned into Astro Lab.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I'm guessing this current situation with COVID-19 has probably been your biggest challenge to date. Talk about what's kept you committed during these tough times.
Well, I think, first and foremost, continuing to try and bring the beer to to people. Customers that have been with us for 2 years have really kept us committed. We've been blown away by the support and the continued beer purchases, and really just well wishes that please be here after this finishes. So there are people there that are just really, really willing us to make it through. Some and even if it's for purely selfish reasons that they want to keep drinking our beer, that's we've done our job well in making people love it as much as we do. And then some of it, I think, if you ask any small business owner, you don't really have a choice whether you're going to stay committed or not. You've built something, and we've put a lot of time, energy, and resources into building something. So I think just the impetus to keep moving forward and make sure that continues is a big driving factor in staying motivated and keeping things going.
Mm-hmm. Well, being community driven like you are, and kind of that community pub location, talk about anything that you had to do to pivot, maybe what your current business model was pre-COVID versus, what COVID forced you to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask most small businesses, the business model that you had before COVID doesn't look anything like the one you have after. We very, very quickly had to move to primarily online. Initially, when the executive order and the state of emergency was issued, bars, restaurants, and any of those type of establishments were closed until further notice, if you would say that. So we were lucky in many ways in that, food and drink and also manufacturing is classed as an essential industry. So, officially beer became essential. So what we had to do was we moved everything online so people could order online. We really had to think through the safety aspects of people coming and picking up their beer. So nobody came into the tap room. We redesigned the pickup window so that people could walk up safely. We didn't exchange any cash. It was all credit card. Everything was online. So it was pretty much a contactless pickup or delivery. Everything that when COVID hit, most of our beer, I want to say, 90% of it was in a keg. And now I want to say 97% of it is in a can. We are open now and we can sell draft beer, but we're still at 50% capacity. And, even if the authorities are telling people, you can go to a restaurant and be there at 50% capacity, there's still a lot of people that are afraid to do that. So, much of our sales are in cans to go. And then also our wholesale distribution grew a little because people didn't have the option to go and sit in and drink on premise. Mm-hmm. Also, some changes we saw in how we organised our staff. So before COVID, 80% of them were in the tap room, and now 80% of them are in production.
Okay. Well, with the cans, you're hearing more and more about, because there's such a demand, there's actually been a shortage now that's being created in the aluminum can market that just can't keep up, and so many people want them. And are you experiencing that at this point, or how are you dealing or preparing for that if you aren't?
Yeah, we are. I think everybody is experiencing that right now. If I talk to any of the breweries around us, or we go on to any of the professional groups, everyone's kind of hitting that. We've been lucky up to now. I guess, where there's only been 1 week where it's like, are they going to come? Well, it's also real. And, without restaurants being open and being able to put the beer into kegs and sell them through kegs, it's kind of we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. We really hope that at some point, we don't get to a situation where there's beer sitting in tanks with nowhere to go. Yeah. But I think without the other options available for distribution and use for the beer, it's very hard to make plans and contingency plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, given all the challenges and things, tell me, what do you think's contributed to your success?
I think probably personally, I think just the various experiences I've had until I got here have really come to fruition when you're the one that's responsible for doing everything and making sure everything's going right in a business. So, the professional and personal experience I've had in life have been really fundamental in helping me to navigate being a first-time business owner. I have some great people around me that I can go to for advice. You mentioned Julie Verratti. She's been a really useful source of information. The other breweries around us, and then my husband has his own small business, and he's just a wealth of information and moral support for me to get through things in the early stages of having Astro Lab. And then just having a good business partner. Matt and I really do kind of gel and see eye to eye on things, and that really helps. And if we don't, we're both pretty laid back enough to, heated debates, but discuss things to work out anything that may not be in initially agreement on.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then Astro Lab, again, I think it's just all the same factors. It's having really good people and mentors around us to help us to make it what it is. We've got a really great team of people working for us that are very good at what they do and have really, you start out with a vision for your business of what it's going to be, and then you introduce people and it becomes what it's going to become, so we've got a great team around us, and we've got the right people to do to help us on many levels, and the community. So the COVID situation has really brought that home to us. We really, in the last couple of years, we've really developed a great base of, you can call them fans, but we'll call them friends and neighbours who value what we do and really look forward to drinking our beer and look forward to the next brew that we bring out.
Well, that's great. I mean, given that was one of the things you guys wanted when you created this place, to have that kind of sense of community and that place where people could gather. It's great to see that even in tough times like this, you're really getting to see that you were able to do that, and that people value what you do and want you to survive and support you. I think that's got to make you feel good.
Yeah, it does.
That's great. Well, again, remind people where they can find you online.
So our website is astrolabbrewing.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Astro Lab Brewing.
That's great. It's always good when it works out to be one handle. When we talked with Mark at Adroit Theory, that was one of the things he said. He said, if I had one piece of advice for people as they get started, he goes, have the same handle across all platforms. And I said, that's a great idea, but it's not always that easy. So
it isn't always that easy. I always feel sorry for those brands that have like the underscore or the little MD on the end or whatever, because it's always the other handle that people go to first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Emma, I want to thank you for your time today. I hope that everyone at Astro Lab stays healthy and busy. And then I look forward to a time in the near future when you and I can share a pint in person.
Yeah, I look forward to that too.
Share a Pint is released bi-weekly on Friday mornings and can be found at shareapintpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at share_pint. Show notes for this episode are available at shareapintpodcast.com. Music for the show, Groundwork, provided by Kevin MacLeod and can be found online at incompetech.com. Share a Pint is made possible by help from the Community Media Center of Carroll County. Associated with the craft beer industry and have an interesting story you'd like to share on a future episode? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at shareapintpodcast.com or email us at jerry@shareapintpodcast.com. Until the next time we share a pint, I'm Jerry Hulla. Prost.